Welcome to Whisky.com, where fine spirits meet. My name is Luening, Horst Luening. I'm the master taster of Whisky.com, and today I have Benedikt Luening beside me, which happens to be my son. Yes, and today we will have a little dispute, between single malt Scotch whiskey and American whiskey, in particular Kentucky straight bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. And I'm the one who carries the flag for the Scotch whiskey, and be assured, I like also bourbon, Irish, Japanese whiskey as well as Canadian. So I'm trying to figure out why Scotch single malt whiskey might be better than Kentucky straight bourbon, and Benedikt will be the one.
Yeah, I'm the one who will be the devil's advocate for Kentucky straight bourbon and Tennessee whiskey. Here in front of me, you can see all the bottles. And be assured, I like Scotch as well, and I like Japanese, German. It's all about whiskey that I like. But today, only bourbon and Kentucky straight whiskey is good, and I will give Horst a hard time discussing the Scotch against the bourbon.
Yeah, so at first, let me give you an explanation about single malt Scotch whiskey and why this spirit is that good and has such a major advantage before those booze. Well, single malt whiskey has a lot of diversity. There are close to 100 whiskey distilleries in operation in Scotland, and there's a lot of whiskies there which was produced in distilleries in the meantime defunct or mothballed. There's a big variety of Scotch whiskey, and there are whiskies with a smoky aroma like these two here, or a smoother aroma, and Scotch whiskies may have a very high age, like this Lagavulin, 16 years old, but you're also able to buy, well, whiskies up to 50 years. This is quite a long time, longer than most of you would have lived today. There are only 3 ingredients, which is barley, yeast, and water. Don't laugh. And there's a lot of craftsmanship inside these whiskies. As long as a mouse is on the computer, the whiskey is handmade. Well, and of course there are very natural warehouses where the whiskey matures for years and years, which is a very natural way to mature whiskey.
Okay, so why is bourbon and Tennessee whiskey better than any of the Scotch stuff? First of all, talking about variety. Yeah, bourbon and Tennessee whiskey may not have that much variety in production facilities, but our variety is within the mash bill. How can you produce a product with just one ingredient, malt? We have corn, we have rye, we have barley, we have wheat, and you could even put in other stuff. And this limitation to just single malt is just that cuts off so many good flavors that are very important inside a good whiskey. Also, we have very strict laws about additives. There are no additives here. This is a natural product. And the other thing is we use fresh casks, because fresh casks give the whiskey the flavor. Maturation is really, really important, and there is no substitute for fresh American white oak cask. Another thing is, with the Scotch whiskey, we now find that there is some trouble with the supply, and with our superior distilling methods and this mass production, we can supply our stuff in almost infinite amounts and infinite numbers. So there is no problem with declining quality, because we can keep up with the demand and satisfy the market. Yeah, and the last thing is we have a really good climate in Kentucky and Tennessee that has huge differences between the winter and the summer, and that lets the cask breathe, and there comes an interaction with the cask, and that gives that nice, wonderful vanilla and caramel flavor that you have within the Kentucky Straight Bourbon and the Tennessee whiskey. So, yeah, let's get into the discussion.
Yeah, about the variety. First, there's only roughly half a dozen industrial style big whiskey distilleries which produce, well, in a continuous way, in industrial size, like the oil industry in Saudi Arabia, on distillation columns, always the same liquid, and all have nearly the same column stills in use, so there's no difference in shape, like the pot stills in Scotland. About your mash bill, it's like mixing things up, like the blend whiskies from Scotland. This is, well, cheap stuff for the world.
I would argue with that, because the mash bill, if you've walked around in Kentucky and Tennessee and tried all the mash bills in their fermentation process, there is a huge difference between that. And for we only have column stills. We have the Woodford Reserve distillery that has pot stills. Okay, they're from Scotland, but we can do that. But the mass market wants the column stills, and because they know it's good.
To the oak casks, you have just one type of oak cask. It's American white oak, which is not that bad. We also like it for the Scotch whisky industry, but to tell a truth, you only use the first fill casks from American white oak because law enforces you to do so, because there is a subsidy to the lumber industry to cut enough fresh wood to keep them busy. There are regulations pending in the US which try to weaken that and to use also used cask as we do.
Yeah, that raises the question. If the bourbon only uses the cask once and then ships it to Scotland, how do the Scots make their whiskey without having made bourbon before? So then you have to make bourbon to make Scotch. So that it's kind of dependent here. And the other thing is, yeah, we are allowed, at least with a Tennessee whiskey, to have it matured in another cask as well. First you have to mature it in a fresh cask, because that you have to do that. And the other thing is, I would take the comparison and the analogy of a tea bag. You use your tea bag, you make a tea, and the first time it's really good, the second time it's not that good. Do you use your tea bag twice? I don't think so. So why do you use a barrel twice? I don't like it.
Well, it makes things cheaper, profits higher, but that's typically your turn in the colonies. We use also European oak casks, and these European oak casks give additional flavor into whiskey, like this Belgium. It is matured as well in ex-bourbon casks and sherry cask from Spain, and the European oak has much more intensity, much more flavor, much more depth than these weak and light American white oak casks.
I have two problems with that. First of all, the European oak is just too bitter. People don't like bitter stuff. And the second thing is, if you have wine before that, then you exclude the Jewish people. That you don't have a kosher whiskey when you put in wine casks. So you exclude a lot of people. I would just not do it, because it's not worth it.
We also have whiskey, which is kosher. Well, that's the Glendronach, I think the Robo Reserve.
That's exclusively matured in bourbon casks.
Yes, of course. Well, I think we don't get that far at this position. We have, in our days, whiskey which is very natural, which is not chill filtered any longer. It's just roughly filtered to remove particles from the cask. And well, here I see at least 2 whiskies which are heftily filtered during production. Of course, the Tennessee whiskey, which is even chill filtered directly after production, and the Woodford Reserve is filtered during the filling process. So you remove all the good stuff from the whiskey just to keep it smooth and mellow.
Yeah, the filtering is not a bug, it's a feature. And it's there to filter out the sharp and intense alcohols. So what we don't have here is booze, we have whiskey, and that's the difference. If you ever had the George Dickel white whiskey, it's even without maturation, it's smooth. And that's what makes a good whiskey. For the chill filtration, sometimes you chill filter the whiskies as well in Scotland. And what I really don't get is the thing, okay, the middle one, the Balvenie, yeah, okay, quite nice. But the other one, that's just that peat thing that you roast the malt over burned sheep mature.
Not really. It's heather. It's old heather, which lies down for thousands of years to give these moors, this peat which you cut. There's nothing of sheep in it. No.
Yeah, but the sheep stand on the field and they drop, and that gets into the peat and then comes into the whiskey. I just don't like it. And it's all that smoky. That's not for me. I don't know why they drink that stuff anyway.
Well, for me, the whiskies are too smooth. They are distilled to a very high ABV. These column stills go up to 80% ABV, and well, this removes all the good aromas from a whiskey, which are, well, extremely intensified by pot stills. So even the LeBroy and Graham Woodford Reserve whiskey, they have 3 pot stills. So they distill 3 times to have a very high ABV. And this removes, well, all the good stuff from a whiskey.
Yeah, I would argue with that. It depends. If you let's say have a Maker's Mark bourbon, then they don't distill that high because they have with their mash bill, with their variety and with their yeast, they have tried to make a spirit that is able to be lower distilled and even in that percentage good. And the others, they choose maybe to distill a bit higher. Depends on what they like to do. At least we limit it because we know if you distill it too high, it's bad. So the Kentucky Straight Bourbon is limited to 80% alcohol by volume or 160 proof after the distillation. Yeah, so...
I still have something.
You still got a point. Okay, go ahead.
Kentucky Straight Bourbons and Tennessee whiskies are, well, young. So where is the complexity of the extremely long maturation? There you see 6 years for the Jim Beam Black, and, well, the others a few years. Well, the George Dickel is a little bit older, I think.
They say it's 10. They didn't write it on it, but we know it's 10 years and more.
Yes, and the others are just a few years. So, well, with a fresh cask you have, it is very difficult to have those whiskies a very long time in those fresh casks, because then...
You don't need to.
Yeah, but you lose complexity. Yeah.
Yeah, so another thing, people from Scotland all say, yeah, just taste of caramel. Yeah, we get that from the wood, but are they only malt, yeast and water inside your bottles, or is there maybe some caramel in it?
Well, I cannot swear for 2 bottles that there is no caramel in it, but the Ardbeg is way officially uncolored, as well as the Highland Park is. And, well, we have a very natural product. We have different casks, not always the same identical casks, no, different casks. So the the color the whiskey acquires during maturation differs a little bit, and so we add a little bit of caramel for some brands to nivellate out the differences in color. Well, there might be, you're right, with the blended whiskey industry, where they have 5 and 6 times filled casks, and then they add a lot of color. You're right. But the single malt whiskey, they are different.
Okay, yeah, I don't like the caramel added. Okay, what else you got?
Well, there's a finishing of whiskey. So you have different casks. That you have a ex-bourbon cask and a sherry cask to mature in, and this gives more complexity, more different flavors in whiskey.
Yeah, we now we have that too in the new Jack Daniel's Gold. We have a maple casks, which you don't have. There is a Jim Beam out on the market where we try to experiment with finishing, but I'm not sure if that's any good. We're not limited to that, but I say you don't need the casks. It's just European oak, bitter, don't need that.
Okay, so I think I'm quite through with my arguments, and I hope there's a lot of discussion in our forum and in the vlog on Whisky.com. And just to give a conclusion, both countries or regions are coming closer to each other. There is the finishing, which starts already in the US, which the Scots have for, say, 15 years or 20 years. We also start with fresh casks in Scotland. The amount of whiskies with those really fresh casks is very limited, but they are coming. And I'm afraid there are more and more whiskies on the market, like this one, which does not carry an age statement on it, so they are also quite young, and they, as the US are. And we see in the US also whiskies with higher ages now. They're approaching, and up to 25, 29 years I've seen already. And in the US, there are more and more microdistilleries on the market, and they use pot stills from a Scottish company called Forsyth, and they build a subsidiary in the US to supply the local market with those pot stills.
Yeah, of course. Forsyth is not the only one. You have Koval as well, the Kote Distillationstechnik from Germany. But the microdistilling industry in America is growing and growing. You see it on every corner. You can make bourbon not only in Kentucky, but all around the country. Only Kentucky straight bourbon comes from Kentucky. So we have more age statement whiskies like Elijah Craig, and all the small companies experiment with different casks. So yeah, it's getting a bit more mixed up.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I'm hope to see the discussion as well. And thank you for watching. If you think somebody might be interested in this video, then please feel free to share this video with these friends.